SCP Foundation Introduction from Automated Message to Junior Researcher blank. Welcome to the SCP Foundation, Researcher. It has likely been a difficult journey to find yourself where you are today, having to be scouted out by people you've never met before and invited to exams and interviews for a position you were never fully told of. We can imagine you already have a few questions, whether it be where you are, who is here with you, or why you were chosen to be here. Many of these questions we will not be able to answer. Some of them we will. In the interest of not making new personnel go through their first several weeks guessing what each task force, site, and acronym actually stands for, we have compiled all the information you'd reasonably need and can be given into a single automated message sent to every new recruit's personal inbox. We recommend going over these at your earliest convenience. About the SCP Foundation. Our mission statement, a word from the administrator, and other miscellaneous information we expect new recruits to be aware of. Mankind, in its present state, has been around for 250,000 years, yet only the last 4,000 have been of any significance. So, what did we do for nearly 250,000 years? We huddled in caves and around small fires, fearful of the things that we did not understand. It was more than explaining why the sun came up. It was the mystery of enormous birds with heads of men and rocks that came to life. So we called them gods and demons, begged them to spare us, and prayed for salvation. In time, their numbers dwindled and ours rose. The world began to make more sense when there were fewer things to fear. Yet the unexplained can never truly go away, as if the universe demands the absurd and the impossible. Mankind must not go back to hiding in fear. No one else will protect us. We must stand up for ourselves. While the rest of mankind dwells in the light, we must stand in the darkness to fight it, contain it, and shield it from the eyes of the public, so that others may live in a sane and normal world. We secure, we contain, we protect. The Administrator. Object classes. A rundown of the standard anomaly classification system and what each designation says about its respective item. Required reading for new researchers. Information regarding esoteric object classes may also be read. All anomalous objects, entities, and phenomena requiring special containment procedures are assigned an object class. An object class is a part of the standard SCP template and serves as a rough indicator for how difficult an object is to contain. In universe, object classes are for the purpose of identifying containment needs, research priority, budgeting, and other considerations. An SCP object class is determined by a number of factors, but the most important factors are the difficulty and the purpose of its containment. Primary classes. These are the most common object classes used in SCP articles and make up the bulk of the object. Safe. Safe class SCPs are anomalies that are easily and safely contained. This is often due to the fact that the Foundation has researched the SCP well enough that containment does not require significant resources, or that the anomalous require a specific and conscious activation or trigger. Classifying an SCP as safe, however, does not mean that handling or activating it does not pose a threat. For a complete list of safe articles, click here. We're not going to do that. Euclid. Euclid class SCPs are anomalies that require more resources to contain completely, or where containment isn't always reliable. Usually, this is because the SCP is insufficiently understood or inherently unpredictable. Euclid is the object class with the greatest scope, and it's usually a safe bet that an SCP will be this class if it doesn't easily fall into any of the other standard object classes. As a note, Any SCP that's autonomous, sentient, and/or sapient is generally classified as Euclid due to the inherent unpredictability of an object that can act or think on its own. Keter. Keter-class SCPs are anomalies that are exceedingly difficult to contain consistently or reliably, the containment procedures often being extensive and complex. The Foundation often can't contain these SCPs well due to not having a solid understanding of the anomaly or lacking the technology to properly contain or counter it. A Keter SCP does not mean the SCP is dangerous, just that it is simply very difficult or costly to contain. Thormeal. Thormeal class SCPs are anomalies that the Foundation specifically uses to contain other SCPs. Even the mere existence of a Thormeal class objects is classified at the highest levels of the Foundation, and their locations, functions, and current status are known to a few personnel found to and current status are known to few Foundation personnel outside of the O5 Council. Neutralized. Neutralized SCPs are anomalies that are no longer anomalous, either through having been unintentionally or accidentally destroyed or disabled. Apollyon. Apollyon class SCPs are anomalies that cannot be contained, are expected to breach containment immediately, or some other similar scenario. Such anomalies are usually associated with world-ending threats or a K-class scenario of some kind and require massive efforts from the Foundation to deal with. Archon. Archon class SCPs are anomalies that could theoretically be contained but are best left uncontained for some reason. Archon SCPs may be part of consensus reality that is difficult to fully contain or may have adverse effects if put into containment. These SCPs are not uncontainable. The defining feature of this class is that the Foundation chooses to not put the anomaly into containment. Essentially, if you're wondering what SCP class an object should be, you can try the locked box test. The locked box test is an informational guideline used to determine an object's most appropriate object class, and it goes like this. If you lock it in a box, leave it alone, and nothing bad will happen, it's probably safe. If you lock it in a box, leave it alone, and you're not entirely sure what will happen, then it's probably Euclid. If you lock it in a box, leave it alone, and it easily escapes, it's probably Keter. If it is the box, it's probably Thormeal. If you can't fit it in a box, and it's about to enter the world, it's probably Apollyon. And if you could have locked it in a box, but choose not to, it's probably Archon. Security clearance levels. How our classification system works. Violation of clearance levels is ground for instant contract termination and likely amnesticization. So take this information to heart. Yeah, sorry guys, I'm not reading all of this. It's essentially D class are disposable. And then it goes CBA in matters of importance. Then O5 is the highest, and then just above them you have the administrator. There are 13 on the O5 Council, and they essentially run the SCP Foundation. You'll find out about them as I go through the SCP stuff as well. And then for information, it goes from level 0 to level 5. From unofficial use to confidential, restricted, secret, top secret, and Thormeal. Okay, and then you have staff titles, which typically change quite a bit, so there's no point in going through that either. Then you have administration, which is a site director in the O5 Council. The site director are in charge of entire sites that hold multiple SCPs. And then they report directly to the O5 Council. O51 to O513. And the O5 Councils, like I said, essentially run the SCP organization. And then just above that, they have in some aspects, they have the administrator, but in other SCPs, the O5 councils are the highest because there are multiple different canons and multiple different timelines and universes and stuff like that. And you'll get to know some mobile task forces and field agents, stuff like that. Okay, so let's move on to the next aspect of the SCP Foundation. Actually, that is for a startup. That is pretty much everything. You will figure out more information as I start to go through the different SCPs and stuff like that. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for listening. If you liked it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I would actually like to know if you guys want me to keep reading these. And my reading voice will get better the more I read them, and my comprehension of reading aloud what I'm reading in my head will get better as well. So, if you liked it, say so. If you didn't, I don't really care. But anyway, I'll see you guys in the next episode. But until then, bye.